A man who extorted millions of dollars through ransomware attacks and invested in a luxury resort recently learned that he will spend 20 years residing at a U.S. prison, working for less than 50 cents per hour. Hi, I'm Marcus Christian. Welcome to the Cyber Sidebar. Daniel Christian Hulia is a Romanian citizen and former affiliate of the NetWalker ransomware operation. It had a ransomware as a service model. NetWalker developers created and updated the malware, and Hulia and other affiliates deployed it against high-value targets. According to the Department of Justice investigation, Hulia was one of about 100 affiliates. Law enforcement identified more than 400 victims, but there likely were well more than 1,000, including companies, municipalities, hospitals, law enforcement, emergency services, and educational institutions. Together, the victims paid tens of millions of dollars in NetWalker ransoms. Daniel Hulia and his co-conspirators attacked more than 50 victims, forcing them to pay more than $21 million in ransoms. Now, this happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, when many organizations endured crushing human and financial strain. Capitalizing on victims' distress, Hulia made money hand over fist. He might have thought that the flow of money would never end, but U.S. authorities coordinated with international counterparts and discovered hidden details about the NetWalker operation. Eventually, officials obtained a copy of a Bulgarian server. It contained transactional information from each of NetWalker's affiliates, including Hulia and the Canadian co-conspirator. In January of 2021, the DOJ shook up the NetWalker ransomware world. They seized more than $450,000 in cryptocurrency from ransom payments, indicted a Canadian affiliate, and disabled a dark web hidden resource used to communicate with NetWalker ransomware victims. When NetWalker affiliates attempted to access the resource, they instead reached a page reading that this hidden site has been seized by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as part of a coordinated law enforcement action taken against the NetWalker ransomware. Hulia likely panicked when he learned about the seizures and the indictment. He undoubtedly worried that his own indictment would come one day. And it did. In 2023, the Department of Justice indicted Hulia for conspiracy to damage 10 or more protected computers and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The United States District Court for the Middle District of Florida issued a warrant for his arrest. Authorities detained Hulia in Romania and extradited him to the United States in September of 2023. 9 months later, in June of 2024, Hulia pled guilty to both conspiracy charges and agreed to forfeit nearly $21,500,000 in assets and to pay nearly $15 million in restitution to his victims. In exchange, prosecutors agreed not to charge Hulia with any other known crimes and to request a sentence at the low end of the range calculated under the U.S. sentencing guidelines, which was about 10 years. At the December 19, 2024 sentencing hearing, the government recommended 121 months of imprisonment. The government's agreement to the low end of the sentencing range did not reflect the expectation that Hulia would help efforts to prosecute additional NetWalker affiliates, however. In fact, the prosecutor discussed what Hulia had done before his arrest to obstruct justice and hinder the investigation. First, he had destroyed evidence. After learning about a co-conspirator's arrest, Hulia destroyed any information that might have helped in the investigations of others. Second, Hulia tried to prevent authorities from recovering the ransoms that he had extracted from his victims. Specifically, he transferred approximately $10 million to a Russian national to invest in a resort in Bali, Indonesia. Hulia's attorney asked for a sentence lower than the government's recommendation. To support his request, the attorney described Daniel Hulia as remorseful, cooperative, and family-oriented. He also argued that the conditions in the Romanian jail that housed him prior to his extradition warranted a reduced sentence. According to the attorney, jailers kept him locked in his cell for about 24 hours a day with up to 6 people who were all smoking cigarettes, and the cell had bedbugs. What's more, the attorney attributed Hulia's destruction of evidence to fear and desperation and called the defendant's learning of a co-conspirator's arrest a terrorizing event. Next, Daniel Hulia spoke to the judge. He expressed remorse, took responsibility for his actions, and told the court that he is not the same person that he was when he committed the crimes. He further said, "My only dream at the moment is to return to my beloved wife, to continue our journey to have a child, and to rebuild my life from scratch." Lastly, I want to promise you that I will never again appear as a defendant in a courtroom since I have fully learned my lesson. Before sentencing Julia, the judge discussed the harm caused by cybercrime, saying, "The problem here is that this is kind of more than a fraud, you know. If you had gone to these people and hit them over a head with a tire iron and taken the money, they would have been better off, because this causes people to be fired. It causes lack of trust in and among businesses and relationships. You know, it's why everybody now has to change their password every 180 days. The judge emphasized the need for deterrence, stating, "The people who do this, wherever they are, I don't know Estonia, I don't know where they are, St. Petersburg, Russia, they need to understand that they're not going to get some little light sentence." The sentence, unfortunately for Mr. Julia, who apparently doesn't have a whole lot to sell for cooperation for several reasons. He came in late and maybe by his own doing covered his tracks, which the government would have been interested in seeing where they went. They need to understand that this is what happens to people who do this. The judge sentenced Julia to 20 years of imprisonment, the statutory maximum for the wire fraud conspiracy conviction. The judge also noted that Julia might have received a much longer sentence had he gone to trial and been found guilty. And you should rest assured, sir, that if you had gone to trial, you would have received whatever the maximum sentence was, which would have probably ended up, with all the various money laundering counts, probably ended up something around life. A week later, Daniel Christian Julia appealed his sentence, which the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit likely will uphold. Either way, the district court's sentence and its rationale focused on a critical issue in addressing cybercrime: preventing future crimes. Certainly, if Julia remains in jail for 20 years, the sentence should incapacitate him from committing another cybercrime for a long, long time. But will it accomplish general deterrence by making other ransomware criminals understand that they're not going to get some little light sentence, as the judge said? Well, research suggests that it won't. The certainty of an arrest and punishment matter much more than the severity of punishment in preventing crime. That's what the research says. And some studies have concluded that the chance of catching and punishing the person behind a cybercrime is less than 1%. Not only that, a 2023 report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office stated that the federal government lacks comprehensive cybercrime data and monitoring, which compromises preparation to combat cybercrime. That said, cybercriminals do have at least two reasons to keep looking over their shoulders. First, law enforcement agencies have improved at investigating cybercrime, including by increased international cooperation over the last several years. Second, untold numbers of cybercriminals already face charges, but just don't know it because their indictments remain under seal until their arrests can occur. Those ultimately arrested may also face federal judges who impose long sentences. Meanwhile, the pace and perniciousness of cybercrimes will continue to climb. To keep track of cybersecurity, AI, and legal developments, be sure to hit like and subscribe on YouTube and to connect on LinkedIn. I'm Marcus Christian, and I thank you for watching the Cyber Sidebar. Be well, stay safe, and make a positive difference in the lives of others.